With the 2010s quickly coming to a close, it has definitely been a decade to remember for Major League Baseball, with some amazing World Series like 2011, 2017, multiple players getting 3,000 hits like Jeter, Ichiro, ADRIAN, BELTRE, and guys getting 600 home runs as well like A-Rod, Jim Thome, and Albert Pujols. There have been a ton of moments to remember, and it has been an absolutely crazy ride, but like all rides, it's finally coming to a finish. So today, we're going to be looking at the top 10 position players of the decade, and the list is mostly going to be in order of how much WAR they got throughout the decade, starting from the best and then moving downwards from there. So, without wasting any more time, we're going to go ahead and get right into it. The top 10 best players of the 2010s in Major League Baseball. So as you could tell, the list is going in descending order because Mike Trout is at the top, surprising absolutely nobody. And at this point, whenever Mike Trout is in the picture, it's not really a debate on who's better than him, because nobody is, but rather how good was Mike Trout himself. Well, I think we can confidently say he was easily the best player of the decade, leading everyone in baseball with a 72.5 WAR from the span of 2010 to 2019. Which is 25 over the next closest player, who we'll get into in a bit. And Mike Trout has been consistently the best player in baseball since 2012. I would say over the entirety of the decade, no one's really come close. And it feels like sometimes we truly don't appreciate just how good he is, because this is a once-in-a-lifetime generational talent that we all get to witness. And to be honest, we're all pretty damn lucky to see it. So it's no surprise to see Mike Trout at the top, once again. Next up on the list, we have kind of a surprise, I would say, for a lot of people, because of his recent play, but it's Robinson Cano, who started off the decade very, very strong. 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, all really solid years for the second baseman. And then since then, he's been much more inconsistent, with some good years sprinkled in though, of course. 2014, 2016, and 2018 being some of the standouts, but I feel like the guy gets a lot more flack than he deserves because he's still been very, very good this decade, even though he's been a lot more injured now, a lot more inconsistent, and of course he got suspended for steroids. He still managed to accumulate 54.2 WAR from 2010 to 2019, which is good for the second best in all of baseball. And if he plays out the entirety of his contract and does so at even an average level, there's a pretty good chance that we could see him get into the Hall of Fame. Not as surefire as it was a few years ago, but there's still a pretty good chance. But I would say he's definitely had a decade to remember and has been one of the most impactful players in all of baseball. In at number 3, we have a player who shouldn't be as surprising as our number 2 spot, and that is Joey Votto from the Cincinnati Reds, who has just been an absolute monster in the 2010s. Most well known for his on-base percentage and really solid defense, Joey Votto has been one of the most consistently productive players of the last 10 years. He hasn't been quite as good as he used to be in the last 2 years, but from 2010 to 2018, the guy was really in just a league of his own. His combination of patience, discipline, and bat-to-ball skills in general was almost unmatched, which is why he put up a WAR of 52.1 throughout the entirety of the decade. And although he's not finishing the decade as strong as he started it with that MVP in 2010, he's definitely made his mark, coming in as the third best player of the 2010s. In at the number 4 spot, we have our first retired player to make the list, and that is ADRIAN BELTRE, the third baseman, future Hall of Famer, who spent the majority of the 2010s on the Texas Rangers, along with a brief stint on the Boston Red Sox. And even though he played the entire decade in his 30s, which most people would say is past his prime, he was one of the best third basemen in the game for a majority of the decade, which is ridiculously impressive. And even in his advanced age, he managed to put up a WAR of 51 in the entire decade. Still, I must remind you, while in his 30s, which just shows that ADRIAN BELTRE was pretty much the mark of consistency in all of baseball. Obviously a really nice bat, really good defensive skills too, and in a few years we'll see him giving that speech to go into Cooperstown. In at number 5, we have another third baseman who, honestly, I was kind of surprised to find out he would be this high in the list. That is Josh Donaldson, who got kind of a late start into this decade. He really started playing well in 2014, and since then has accumulated a WAR of 44.8. Of course, he won the MVP in 2015. He was definitely in the running for the award again a couple of other years. And even to this day, despite some down years such as 2018 where he faced injuries and inconsistency, he's still one of the better third basemen in the league. Since he got such a late start, I didn't think that he'd even be on the list, but his numbers have been so ridiculously good that it just propelled him forward. At the time of recording this now, he's a free agent. Interesting to see where he's going to end up, but whoever gets him is getting one hell of a third baseman. In at number 6, we have one of the players who've had probably one of the best peaks that we have ever seen in the last 20 to 30 years in baseball, but also one of the worst and kind of most frustrating declines as well. That is Miguel Cabrera of the Detroit Tigers. And since the start of 2010, we've seen him win a triple crown, a few MVPs, and get awarded with one of the biggest contracts in baseball history at the time. But since 2016, it's hard to say that he's had a good year since. 2017, 2018, and 2019 were all riddled with injuries and below average performances. But Miggy is still on track to become a future Hall of Famer, even if he's not performing as well as he once did. And that absolutely amazing stretch he had from about 2010 to 2015 still allows him to come in at number 6 on the list, putting up a WAR of 43.5 in the decade. And I, for one, hope he gets to turn it around. Maybe at this point a change of scenery could do some good, even though no one's going to want to take on that contract. But you never know what could happen. But he's one of the greats for sure. In at number 7, we have former Arizona Diamondbacks first baseman, now St. Louis Cardinals first baseman, Paul Goldschmidt, who since he's come up in the early 2010s has been one of the best overall hitters in the league. He's been great at getting on base, hitting for power, even stealing bases. And defensively, he's just one of the best all-around players in baseball. Coming close to winning multiple MVP awards, although he never actually did secure one, and being an all-star a countless number of times throughout the last 10 years. Paul Goldschmidt was another example of freakishly consistent, similarly to how ADRIAN BELTRE was. And throughout the 2010s, he put up a WAR of 43.1, which is good enough to land him in the number 7 spot. And just behind Joey Votto and Miguel Cabrera, he's been one of the best first basemen in the league for years, and I don't really see that slowing down anytime soon. In at number 8, we have another guy who I wasn't really expecting to see on here, mainly because I haven't heard his name in a while. It might be just a East Coast to West Coast thing, but regardless, it's Evan Longoria, now of the San Francisco Giants, formerly the Tampa Bay Rays third baseman, who, since his arrival to San Francisco, has been kind of a below average player. But from 2010 to about 2016, 2017, he was always a consistently great hitter. Defense not really his specialty, but he always came through clutch at the plate, being the Rays' face of their franchise for years. And he managed to put up a 42.4 WAR in this whole decade. And back when it started, he was truly a force to be reckoned with at the plate. I remember watching countless Yankees-Rays games where he absolutely destroyed the Yankees, and they never learned their lesson, kept pitching to him. And on the day he got traded to San Francisco, I don't think I've ever been that happy in my life to know that I never have to watch him destroy my team ever again. But I still root for the guy. I hope he can turn it around in San Francisco. If not, another change of scenery may be in order, but he's definitely earned his place on this list. In at number 9, we have another San Francisco Giant, and that is Buster Posey, who used to be one of the best catchers in baseball. Now I think with all these younger guys coming up and old age creeping in, it's hard to say that he's still up there. The stats have fallen off quite a bit in the last few years, but what he's done for that team and that city cannot be understated. In his prime, Buster Posey was an absolute legend for San Francisco, accumulating a WAR of 42.4, and without him, the Giants would have never won those 3 World Series, or even come close really, which is why he's not going anywhere anytime soon, and that's how he cemented his legacy and his place on this list. And last but certainly not least, rounding out our top 10 list, Mookie Betts, Red Sox right fielder, who has only been playing in the league since about 2014, but since then has definitely left an impact, being one of the best players in all of baseball, and probably around the world as well. He's been in the MVP discussion almost every year since he came up, and he's another shining example of absolute consistency, and he's managed to put up a WAR of 42 since his call-up to now the end of the decade. And like Josh Donaldson, I wasn't really sure if he was going to end up on the list due to his late start, but since he came up, he's just been so good that he managed to sneak on. And unfortunately, the Red Sox do want to trade him because money, which I think is terrible for their team and terrible for their city. But if they do end up moving him, whoever gets him is getting one hell of a baseball player, and that's for sure. Well, if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this. Now keep in mind this list was only for position players. If you guys want me to make another one for pitchers too, I can make that happen. Just let me know in the comments down below. And also let me know your top 10 list of players that you think were the best of the decade. As always guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm out. Peace.